Hey, family, I just want to say thank you again for taking the time to listen to today's episode. If it wasn't for you guys, we would not be here. We bring every guest on to teach, to motivate, to inspire you. You are the reason that we are here. But the only way we are able to help more people is if you guys can like and subscribe to our channel, or even share a video to your friend. That'll mean the world to us and the team. So enjoy today's episode, and we'll see you soon. Michelle Berrios. I don't think you need an introduction. I'm pretty sure everyone who is watching this is probably a fan of Michelle. But if you can, for those who don't know you, if you give a 1-minute introduction of who you are.
Wow. I'm a lover of God. I'm a wife. I am a sister. I am a daughter, soon to be mother, songwriter, artist, vocal coach, data specialist, friend, all of the above and more. But that's really it.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know how I could do it. I would definitely not be able to do that. Definitely a mother. Can't do it. Anyway.
Definitely not.
Let's talk about your music. Let's talk about the first time you decided to write your own work.
Yeah.
Explain to us, how does that look like?
So I first started when I was about 13, and I was just writing randomness. That just looked like writing my feelings and trying to make it rhyme. So that was super vulnerable, super journal entry, diary entry mode, but trying to make it sound nice. But when I really started stepping into creating music, it was more doing it for a purpose, a reason to reach others, to have them know, hey, I can relate to you. There's somebody going through the same thing. And then another level above that was when I reached like my 20s and I started writing for the purpose to please God, to bless God, to bring his word to the world. And, it's kind of just progressed over the years from 13 years old.
You wanting to relate to people. How old were you at that time?
That was probably like late teens.
So where does that come from? You wanting to relate to people. A lot of people like 17, 16 are not relating to people.
I so badly wanted community. I was missing that, especially in high school. I wanted just to, I don't know, I wanted something. And I think that something was like God and God-centered people. And I didn't know how to put it into words. So I felt lonely, even with people around, because I really felt like there was a certain love, peace, positive vibe that I wasn't getting when I was in high school. So I wanted to create a community that understood where I was coming from, and maybe that would somehow draw people in. Maybe they'd be like, wow, like this is cool, and we'd get to like be friends. And I did. And then when I started going to church, I would write these songs, and I met other artists, I met other creatives, other musicians, and yeah.
I went from there.
Yeah.
So I want to touch on that because I think a lot of people feel the same way. When you said, even when there's people in the room, you still felt alone.
Mm-hmm.
Besides just communicating with other people and getting better friends, like how did you deal with that in the moment? Like getting out of that feeling of loneliness.
How did I deal with it before going to church?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Oof. I mean, I felt inside different. Like I felt like I was with these people and I'm like I'm not happy. Like they're talking about all the same things and I'm feeling like a distance. And in those moments, I think I just sank into a depression. And my parents, when I would go home, they're like, you're so negative. What's wrong with you? And I just remember one day, and I guess maybe this is how I dealt with it. I was like, hey, can we just go to church? You guys talk about all these great times when you were younger and you met and you had all these beautiful friends and youth group. And I'm like, why don't we just go back? And they were like, you know what? It might be time. So when I was like, well, I guess it was a little early, like 15 years old. That's when we really started looking for churches and went from there.
Interesting. So let's talk about your first song that you wrote when you were writing to God.
Yes.
or for God?
Yes.
Talk about that.
Yes, that was my first single, Used to This. And I love pop music. I just love it so much. And I wanted to, and it came so easy because like I realized writing for the world or writing just to write, to relate to people was much harder than writing for God. So when I was writing for the Lord, it just came so easy. I wrote Used to This because I was finally stepping into this new season with God. I'm like, you know what? I can get used to this. Like, this is different, but I could really step in and keep doing this because like this joy and peace that I found. But at the same time, I met Brandon. I met my husband, and I was like, wow, I could get used to this too. Like, this is a different relationship. Yes. And it happening simultaneously was just totally God. It was such a confirmation. But that was the first song that I feel like I wrote for the Lord. And I was like, yeah, this came so easy and it was so fun. And it felt good. It felt right.
Is writing music always easy for you?
Absolutely not. Not always. It's definitely hard. I get a little nervous when I'm like on a time crunch or somebody's asking me to kind of like, hey, like you're a great songwriter. Can you come write for me? And I'm like, ooh, like don't pressure me. But there are times where it can take 3, 4, 5 months to finish a song, or the Lord will just deposit it like in the moment. So depends.
And when you write music, I think a lot of creatives, a lot of maybe songwriters, musicians, I think one of the biggest, and I think in general for anybody who have a task in front of them that want to complete or something they want to get better at.
Yeah.
I think distractions is one of the biggest things we deal with. And how do you overcome your distractions?
I think the biggest distraction is comparison. And that's how I know I'm scrolling too much. I'm not doing, and I'm just scrolling. And I need to just chill off the phone and start getting back to intimacy, start getting back to the prayer closet, and stop striving and start being like with the Lord. And that's always what it was supposed to be, right? Like when we're in the garden with him, like being with the Lord. And that's what it is, getting back to being with the Lord. And that's where everything flows, like the creativity, the pressures release, and all of that good stuff. That's, yeah.
And what does being with the Lord look like for you?
Being with the Lord looks like being in the middle of my living room, everything quiet. It could be in silence. I could have a worship hat on, but it's really just sitting there, praying, not praying, listening, reading the word, not reading the word, standing up, walking around, speaking in tongues, not speaking in tongues. It looks like so many different things, but for me, that's where I really get to like tap in.
And if somebody asks you, I think a lot of people look up to you because especially when you put out music, people are like, oh my God, I know Michelle, I know her.
Yeah.
And if someone asks you, how can they find their own way to spend time with God? What will you say to them?
Wow. I mean, I definitely think that one-on-one time is important, like building. So get alone with God, like be okay with uncomfortable silence to a point where it's not uncomfortable anymore. I remember being on a cruise one time. I was on vacation. And at this point, I wanted to read the word. I wanted to get into it, but I was still doing my thing. I was still like, it was kind of like BC era where I was just doing my thing. But I wanted to get into the word. And I remember I relied so much on worship music to get me there. My phone ended up dying. I dropped it in water. Didn't have my phone for the rest of the trip. So then I was like, Lord, how am I going to pray? How am I going to get to the point where I can read your word? I'm going to be here in silence. And I feel like he was like, exactly. Like that's what I wanted. Yeah. And to this day, I still train myself to not need music, to not need, ambiance. I just literally sit at 6 a.m. in the middle of my living room and I'm like, all right, Lord, whatever you want to do.
That's funny you say that because I was talking to Mariah recently. I think it was probably 2-3 months ago about music and how people use it in prayer. And as I feel like there is a spiritual presence over music, because we could look at in the Bible when David played his harp, spirit that was on Saul would leave, and then when he stopped, it came back on. But I also feel like music can also play to emotions.
Yeah.
How would you balance telling someone when they're praying, like maybe music is too much, and then you're just going off of emotions? 'Cause I see it a lot even in the church world, where they want the keys to be playing because they feel like that's like, whatever the key of G is, the moment where the Holy Spirit moves,
Right.
And I know we're gonna go into that, how you lead even your own worship team. How do you distinguish when it's time to maybe not play any music and bring music? It doesn't make sense. Does that make sense?
Would it like on a Sunday?
Maybe on a Sunday, maybe when it's just you and Brandon, like maybe music is not for right now. Maybe we're going off the hype.
Yeah. I would say it's really being sensitive to the Spirit, using discernment. What is the Lord doing? Alone, I would say, if I know I've gotten to a point where it's not a crutch, like it's not something that I need to get myself there. It's just like, oh, okay, like let's just put it on, like cool. But if I know I've been doing it maybe for all the time for the last 3 months and I haven't been able to sit in that silence without any distractions, then I'm like, all right, it's time. Like you've done it too much. But I'll feel the conviction of the Holy Spirit. And I think that comes with intimacy. And same thing on a Sunday morning. How do I know if we need music or we don't, or this moment calls for just, pressing in? I think it comes with discernment. It comes with intimacy and knowing what the Lord is telling you in the moment. So, yeah.
And before we go into how you lead your team on Sundays, because that's a whole different topic. I know when everyone, when they start doing something, they have someone they look up to. Who is that person when you first started? Not now, when you first started, who was like, hey, I just want to be who they are, or I want to get close to that.
Ooh. As a worship leader or as like a worship director?
Maybe as an artist.
As an artist. Ooh, that's hard. I think that's a good question. As an artist, I mean, I would say when I first started, I think I liked like Tori Kelly. I still do. Tori Kelly, looked up to like Hilary Duff and like those kind of artists. As I got older, Naomi Rain, Abby Gamboa, like she's somebody that I definitely like relate to music wise, production wise. And yeah, those are definitely like the main two right now.
So interesting. Tori Kelly, Hilary Duff. Why Hilary Duff?
Oh, Hilary Duff. Oh my goodness. When I was growing up, I had the pencil cases, the CDs. She was just, I don't know. She just made these catchy songs. She could sing, she could act, she could dance. And I felt like I could do all of that too. So I don't know. I just was like, we got something here. I'm trying to be like you.
So what's the other thing you think you have connection with Hilary Duff besides singing? What else do you think you can do? You said she can act and do other things. So
I used to dance.
You used to dance.
A lot. Dance classes, salsa classes, hip hop classes, praise dances. I stopped when I started really getting into like worship, but yeah.
And what was your favorite style of dancing?
Probably hip hop.
Hip hop dancing?
Yeah, loved hip hop.
Interesting. The more you know.
The more you know. I'll never show anybody the video though. Never.
Yo, Brandon, if you got any videos, let us know. So let's go into leadership. I didn't even know we were going to get here, but we're here. It's very hard.
Yeah.
I know for sure it's hard. How do you deal with leading people? Maybe that's a broad question. Let me get a little more specific. When you deal with multiple different attitudes and emotions on a team, how do you deal with that?
Can we edit that out?
We'll see.
My bad. Okay. So a lot of humility and a lot of patience. So I've had a lot of correction in my life as a worship leader before becoming a worship director, being able to take it, being able to take correction, accept correction. Humility is such a key part. And I was talking about humility this past week, actually, and how like the greatest in the kingdom of God are the children, because they're so humble and, they come with such humble hearts. And I have learned that I've always been put in positions where I'm tested and the Lord is like, what are you going to do? Are you going to be the bigger person? Are you going to lay yourself down for the sake of growing and putting others first? And that's always what it's been. So I think going through those motions where I've had to like bite my tongue and not say anything, even though, I feel like I could defend myself. Those moments made me the leader I am today, because now if somebody's coming to me and they're disrespecting me or they're saying something that I don't really like, I'm not going to come out my face to them. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt, maybe pull them to the side later and say, hey, I didn't really appreciate that. Is everything okay? And maybe talk to them. But it's definitely been a process of patience and humility and learning as I go. I'm not perfect, but those are the two things that have held it down.
Yeah, I think humility is one of the biggest ones, especially in this day and age where people want to be seen. They want to be heard. We have a platform to do it. Everyone has it in their hand to be able to be seen and heard. And that's when the humility gets lost.
Yeah.
And the pride starts to creep in.
Mm-hmm.
And they start to lose themselves.
Yeah.
So I think humility is definitely one of the most important things.
Yeah.
And one other question I want to ask, I've always wanted to ask you, is how do you deal with being a woman in leadership?
Yeah. And
leading other men?
Yeah, I've definitely gotten some pushback, especially like in the beginning where, I'd get attitudes or, they'd look at me a certain way or they'd feel uncomfortable, and I'd get I get it. You're a boss, so you have to be that way. And I'm like, what does that mean? What do you mean I have to be this way? And that's just simply asking somebody to do something, and that was the response. So, I mean, just being vocal, and I'll pull them to the side. I've had a situation where, I did feel like they disrespected me or they called me out in front of people. And I'm like, hey, are we cool? I pulled them to the side. And I'm like, I'm just feeling some tension here. I don't really, understand. And I hope I didn't do anything to cause this. Mm-hmm. And I always put myself in the humility seat of like, maybe it is me. Maybe I don't know. And I hope I didn't, but let me know. And there, of course, it's always like, no. And, after that, I saw like a decrease in it. And then, I don't know if that's always the case for everybody, but, I think when it's brought to their attention, to some people at least, they're like, oh man, maybe my facial expressions are a little too much. Maybe the way I'm speaking to her is degrading or anything like that. But I always bring communication. I'm never keeping anything in. Always talking to my brothers and sisters in Christ about how I feel. That's just, yeah.
And it's just a funny thing I've always thought about, how people look at women in leadership, and I feel that sometimes they feel intimidated. There's like, especially with men, like they feel like, why am I not there? Or who is she to be there? So I've always, and I think I think you do a really good job, first and foremost. I applaud you for it. And it's not easy. But when that time came, when you were asked to lead your own team, how did you feel when that question was asked?
I thought I wasn't ready. I was like, this is insane. I don't know why anybody would ask me to lead a team of people. But I knew it was the Lord. I knew, when he asks you to step out and do uncomfortable things, more than likely it's God. But I was very scared, but willing to take on the challenge because I knew it was him.
And how did you decide to say yes?
How
did that look like?
Yeah, so I was in a season where I wanted to transition out of my last church. And I just remember wanting to have a full-time job as a worship leader, not a worship director, worship leader, just be able to sing songs, come in and out every Sunday, get paid, and, live that beautiful ministry life. And there was a church I was helping out, and I was really hoping they would put me on full-time. It didn't happen. So I was like, okay. And then the church that I was going to at the moment, They weren't, I already knew God wanted to transition me out. So it wasn't until Pastor John called me that he was like, hey, so we're starting a new church. And I want you to be the worship director, and I want you to build this team and bring people in. And it's not paying anything. We're starting from the ground up. We have nobody. It'll be you and your guitar for some time. But I believe that, you're meant to be here. And I was like, okay, this is a lot. Same week, my old pastor hits me up, and my old pastor now, but my pastor at the time, he's like, hey, we want to promote you in the church. Let me know, like, what do you want to do? Then the church I was helping out that I wanted to be on full time, they hit me up same week, and they're like, hey, we want to hire you.
What?
We want to hire you, and we want to pay you, and we would just love to have you full time. And I'm like, all right, God. I'm like, you're funny, because I wanted all of this. And now that this opportunity opened up with Pastor John, everything else was now lining up. So I just knew automatically. I laughed when all these things popped up, and we said yes to Pastor John. It was scary. It maybe didn't make sense to everybody else, but it made sense to me. I was like, okay.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Straight up. That's nuts.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people will take the opportunity to lead a church that is starting from the ground up and then say no to money.
Yeah.
Especially in like the church world, because I think that's where a lot of people want to go to big churches where they pay salary, be like, oh, I can work ministry, something I love to do, and get paid at the same time.
Right.
And not have to sacrifice, starting from a church that's, you could call it a local church, because you have mega churches and you have local churches. And it's mind-boggling that you did that. So I applaud you for that too. You and Brandon. I applaud you guys for that, because you guys are champions first and foremost, and you guys are leading a way for people to follow, especially those who are listening now.
Yeah.
And there's one thing I can't miss for talking about. We have to go back to your artist, what you do as an artist, your foreign EP.
My baby.
Talk to us about that.
Yeah. It's just so good. I love it so much. I can't talk about the foreign EP without talking about Brandon, because he helped me write on every single song. I also can't talk about the foreign EP without talking about Gary Coach, who produced most of the songs, and Justice Tam on Set the Table. I mean, Eli Groves, who helped with the vocal arrangements and the background vocals, like everything. So many people played a part. Adele on strings. I'm just so grateful for the community. That project wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for those people. And obviously, first and foremost, the Lord. But Foreign is just about the Lord and my relationship with him being out of this world, something that I've never been, accustomed to. This unconditional love, this peace, this joy, this comfort that came with him. And I'm like, ooh, I need to stay in this. Like, this is foreign, but this is so good to me. And that's where Foreign came from. But it's just a beautiful EP, a journey of my life, of this walk, of this beginning journey with the Lord. And every season feels foreign with the Lord. I feel like every season is just an adventure. It's a journey of finding him in so many different aspects of life. It's a timeless.
How long does, let's say, because I think some songs were written before others. So we were to start from the first song that was first created to the last song that was created, mixed, mastered, and everything.
Yeah.
How long is that process to create this EP?
Maybe like 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah. Wow. I believe so. I would say I started writing some of the songs in 2019. It didn't come out to 21. So.
Did you know you wanted to do EP? When did you know you wanted to do EP?
I don't think I knew. I think I just had all these songs, and I remember maybe just speaking to Gary, and I could see him probably encouraging me like, hey, just put out an EP. And I was like, okay, cool. And, that process was definitely like 2 years. Mixing and mastering definitely takes time, weeks, could take months, depending on how many songs you have. Lots of money. Lots of money. Like one song to get mixed is like $600-$700 at least, depending on who you're getting to mix your song. But it's definitely a process.
Is there any time you thought about quitting?
Not at that moment, not during the making of the project. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about quitting as an artist?
I definitely felt like the Lord called me to lay down music last year. And he was like, put it down. And I was like, oh, okay. And I did. And I got so much backlash from people that I look up to, people that I respected, that were like, yo, like, this is disappointing. Like, why are you doing this? This is what you're made for. And I'm like, but if the Lord told me, that's where success lies, in obedience, not in how many listeners I'm getting, how many songs I'm putting out. Like, I want to follow him at the end of the day. So.
And how do you deal with not listening to the outside noise, especially when they're friends or maybe their family?
Yeah.
And focusing only on God's voice?
I mean, I thank God for Ignite Church and for my pastor, because they really hear the Lord. And I remember during this time, I was questioning. I was like, Lord, like I feel like I know what you're telling me to do, but everybody else is telling me to do this. And I just remember Pastor John gave me a word, and he was like, hey, people around you are going to tell you that you're crazy. Christians, friends. He didn't know what I was going through. I didn't say music. He was like, they're going to tell you you're crazy, but listen to the Lord. And I just felt like this overwhelming sense of peace. And I'm like, I'm not crazy. Like, thank you, Lord. And that put me in a place where, like, you're just going to have to take it. And it was very hard. It was a very rough couple of months. And I'm not there now. I'm definitely taking my time. I'm slower with my music creating. I'm not as much content creating. I'm not as much on the, trying to get the followers and the listeners. And, I just feel like the Lord is like, you don't need that. And it's crazy because when I actually put down the music, one of my reels got to over 100,000 views. Never had that before. And that was when I got off social media. I stopped music. I walked away. And I even remember being in a Home Goods, and I was wearing a Maverick City shirt. And a woman was like, hey, do you write for them or something like that? And I was like, actually, I've gone to the camps before, and I have written with them. And she was like, that's amazing. I know somebody who runs a label. and I was like, oh, okay, cool. She was like, he runs a Christian label, and I would love to send his music to you. Never heard my music. Wow. She was like, just send me your music. And I was like, okay. I send her the music. She sends it to the guy, and they love me. And obviously I didn't go forward with it because I didn't feel like it was the Lord. I didn't feel like that's what he wanted. I think he was just showing me, look at what I could do. Like, you don't need no platform. I'm your platform, and I will raise you up when it's time, when I want you to. So I was like, ooh, okay, got you. He can make it happen. If he wants to make it happen, he'll make it happen. And I don't need to do nothing. Yeah.
I'm actually 5 quick questions, just quick responses. Okay. Favorite meal of the day?
Breakfast.
Favorite singer right now, currently?
Abby Gamboa.
Vacation site you go to?
Florida.
Favorite worship song right now?
It's this new one that Brandon put me onto. Doxology. What is it called? Good Plans.
And your favorite person?
Brandon Lee Berrios.
Now I have this.
Wait, no.
And I have this one question that I usually ask every guest. And it's, you have one phone call to the world. Everyone's listening. What do you say?
One phone call to the world. Jesus is real and he loves you. Give him a chance.
And that's it. Thank you, Michelle, for being here.
You're welcome.
Super busy, I know.
Thank you. No, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Easy out.